Choosing to stay with us now. One is regarded by many as one of the leading and most influential anti-apartheid cultural activists, artists and documentary photographers in the country, while the other is recognized as one of South Africa's most celebrated artists as a singer, actress and playwright. The pair contributed immensely to the South African creative landscape and were both honoured at the Arts and Culture Trust Awards earlier this week. Of course, I'm talking about Thembi Mtshali Jones and Omar Badshar, who received Lifetime Achievement Awards for visual art and theatre, respectively, at a ceremony on a Tuesday night. The legends, as we call them, are in their own right, are in our Sea Point studios. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And I use this word legend affectionately. Ma'am Jones, let's start with you. I mean, when you're honoured in this way, when people reflect on your contribution, how do you personally reflect on it?
Well, it is a wonderful feeling, and you feel so humbled that people have been watching you and appreciating what you're doing. And at the same time, it also gives you that feeling that you still have to work harder.
Mr. Badshar, let me bring you into this conversation, and it's a very similar question as well. When people on a very public platform recognize the work that you've done, for whatever reason it may be personally, but when there's a public recognition of the work that you do, what does it say to you after all these years, or are you comfortable with the work that you've done, that you don't really need these accolades?
Well, you know, from the beginning of my so-called career as an artist, I had recognition. I exhibited, I won prizes. In fact, my first ever work that I submitted won a major prize. So, you learn to understand that that's the beginning of an adventure, of taking a risk, and you continue. You don't allow your so-called status to come in between you and your subject matter, whether it is a photograph or a drawing. So you have to learn to put yourself behind everything. As a photographer, you don't want to be seen, or don't want to be known. You need to blend into what happens behind the scene. You don't want to be identified. So, well, also as an activist. But in any case, yeah, you learn to deal with those issues. And, my generation, there was no such thing as celebrity. You belong to the community. What you did reflected who you were. And if you got out of hand and become too big for your boots, then people will put you in your place. So you learn to become humble.
Let's talk about those contributions and then the way you were honoured. And maybe let me throw this question back at Ma'am Jones very quickly, because I do think contributions in yours has been from a very from a creative perspective, as a singer, as a writer, as a thespian. When you look back at that contribution now, was that purposefully done from the beginning, or was it somebody who was trying to find a voice?
Well, when I started in this show business, so-called show business, it was back in the 70s. And at that time, there was no theaters that were encouraging you to do theater. And I remember people like, even though I never worked with Gibson Kent, but he was the one that influenced us with his stories. There was a guy who was in my neighborhood in Ndabamhlongo who was working with Gibson. And those stories that they used to tell, we used to go to the halls to listen to their stories. I remember seeing Isikalo there. And at that time, I never thought that I could become an actor myself. And then when I was finally discovered by Welcome Somi, when he was putting his production Umabata, I joined in, but I still had no direction where I was going to. But it sort of like gradually grew, and I started in musicals like Thembi, and I traveled all over the world, and I came back, and then I joined the Market Theatre family, where I started actually working on serious work, because at that time they were working on stories that were telling the stories of our country. And I started working with Gcina Mhlophe, telling her story of Have You Seen Zandile? And eventually I told my own story recently, that I have been traveling all over the world telling my own story. So, but I never thought that people were watching this, and when finally I was called that I was going to be given a Lifetime Achievement Award, and it just told me that it showed me that people have been watching. And I'm a very private person. I never do these things to be awarded, but it is humbling when you see that people are watching and appreciating what you are doing.
The power of photography, the power of the lens, Mr. Badshar. Did you know that the moment you picked up that camera, that you would be able to tell a story, highlight a plight, fight an injustice?
Well, yes. I was very aware of the power of the photograph, of drawing, words, and it becomes much more potent in a situation that we found ourselves in. But yeah, so, and then as a photographer, or when you start out, you begin to appreciate the importance of finding a way of looking at the world. And also we were involved in turning things over to create our own way of seeing. Because remember, we've been, as black people, viewed and presented in a particular light, in a particular way. And so the power of a photograph also resides in the way and how you use the picture, how you frame your subject matter, and to whom you present it, and who your main audience is. So it becomes quite a holistic way of looking, and it, you know, in this country, everything was defined by your race and by your status as a black person. But yeah, so photographs can become a very potent medium.
For sure.
And some of us were very fortunate in being able to exhibit, to move around, and to experience life.
For sure. Thank you, sir. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but thank you very much for joining us from our Cape Town studios, the Sea Point studios. That, of course, is the Lifetime Achievement Awards or winners in visual and theatre. We're talking to Thembi Mtshali Jones and Omar Badshar, talking to us about what the award means to them, and also maybe just a little bit reflecting on their lives and the contributions that they've made to where we find ourselves. We're taking an ad break. Don't go anywhere.